Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining our session today. We are super excited to be here. It's actually our first time presenting at BlueHat, and hopefully not the last one. Today we're going to share with you our insights from one of the most interesting investigations we've had in the last year. We're going to look at, do a deep dive into an Iranian, one of the most aggressive Iranian APT groups operating in Israeli cyberspace, and we're going to share with you how it all relates to the events of October the 7th. But before we dive into all of this, let us quickly introduce ourselves. So with me on stage, first of all, I am Assaf Dahan, Director of Threat Research at Palo Alto Networks. And with me, I have Chechik.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chechik, a Principal Security Researcher at Palo Alto. Happy to be here.
And we have Daniel Frank.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel Frank. I'm the Threat Research Team Lead in Cortex XDR, Palo Alto Networks. Awesome to be here.
And together we make the first cyber boy band. OK, so our story begins. So if you've been in this industry for long enough, you know that most cybersecurity incidents have this tendency of beginning or starting pretty much on a Thursday afternoon, just about as you try to go home and start your weekend. And this case is no exception. So our story does begin on a Thursday. It was October the 5th. Back then, the world was still safer, happier, in many aspects. And our boy here, Chechik, stumbled upon a very suspicious and rare alert in our telemetry. Basically, someone was trying to kill our agent from the kernel. Now, this is something that we don't get to see every day. It's not like this generic, like PowerShell or like Emotet stuff. When it happens, you usually know that something serious is happening. But we didn't know what was going on. And we started looking around. We saw that there was a bunch of other nasty-looking alerts, but it was already 6 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. And since we're security researchers and we're not SOC engineers or incident responders, we're not bound by SLAs, we figured, OK, we'll just alert the relevant teams, talk to the customer, and we'll get back to it on Sunday. And then October the 7th happened. So obviously, our plan to look at it didn't happen. On Sunday, I think this horrendous day caught us really off guard. And on a personal level, I couldn't function for the first couple of days. I was glued to the screen, watching the news for 24/7, feeling a wide range of feelings, and then being completely numb. So after a couple of days of doing that, I felt like I needed some sort of refuge. I needed a distraction. I needed to take my mind off things. And luckily, these guys were kind of on the same boat. So we wanted to go back and see what was happening with this weird alert that we saw. And this is how our journey began. So we already knew at this point that something serious was happening. We knew that someone had gained access, and they're kind of deep in the network, and that they have really high privileges if they can attempt to kill our agent from the kernel, right? So we wanted to trace back their steps and understand, like, who's patient zero, who are these guys, what do they want from us, or from our customers, actually. And we did that. We started looking at our telemetry, pulling all sorts of data, and quite quickly, we were able to detect patient zero. It was an internet-facing web application server, IS server, that was unpatched, of course. And what you can see here is the good old w3wp.exe, which is the main IS process, spawning a lot of mean child processes and doing classic web shell activity. At this point in time, we were saying, OK, there's a web shell here, and maybe if we get some insights about this web shell, we'll have a better clue at what we're dealing with. So as luck would have it, we were able to pull the code of this web shell. And I remember we were slacking each other, and I told these guys, you know, I've seen this code before. I have a really good photographic memory, and it's definitely not like generic China Chopper or any other generic web shell. So I told them, I've seen this before. We have to look for it. So we looked through our malware repository, our YARA rules, VirusTotal, and quickly we found, we got very lucky, and we found the exact same web shell in a Sentinel that appeared in a Sentinel-1 blog about the Agrius APT. So right from the get-go, we had a first clue that there might be an Iranian involvement here. But we said, OK, this is just a first clue. Well, we need to dig in more into it. So we started looking into what other actions these guys took. So at the beginning, right after they gained their access, they ran this reconnaissance spree, basically running all sorts of tools to map out the network, understand the topology, where are the key assets are located. Of course, they used different sorts of tools. Some of them were more like generic and obvious, like NBT scan. Some of them are less familiar, like Win egg drop, which we usually see with Chinese threat actors. So that was a bit refreshing to see here. And so to recap, let's put things on timeline, because there's going to be a lot of information today. So October 5th, early morning, they scanned the network. They found a vulnerable server. They got in. Oh, I forgot to mention, they exploited proxy shell, a vulnerability that has been there for, what, 3 years now? So patch your servers, people, seriously. Anyway, from then, they went on to this reconnaissance spree. They moved laterally within the DMZ. October 6th, they managed to traverse the DMZ and gain access to the internal network. Later on this day, they gained a local administrator account. October 7th, early in the morning, they got to the domain controller, and from there, they were able to compromise the domain admin account. So I bet you're curious to know what they did next. And for that, I'll switch over to Daniel, who will tell you.
Thank you, Assaf. So, well, at this point of time, we are on October 7th, somewhere like in the afternoon, if I remember correctly. And at this point of time, the attackers started to attempt and exfiltrate really sensitive data. They started writing these CSV files, which are blurred for obvious reasons. But trust me on this one, it contained a lot of really sensitive data. Just according, by their names. And in order to exfiltrate the data, they were using this tool that they called sql.net4.exe or whatever. And at this point of time, of course, we did not know if it was a custom tool or maybe like off-the-shelf tool. So we started kind of digging into that. We'll get to that in a second. And obviously, they were using 7-zip to just archive all of the CSV files and attempt and send them back to their C2 server. Cool. So looking at the code of this SQL extractor tool, and obviously Googling it and searching for content in VT and whatnot, we quickly came to the conclusion that this was a custom tool, written even maybe solely just for this attack. You can see on the right-hand side, a lot of these hard-coded strings, like temp-s and temp-s log. Maybe you don't really see it at the bottom here. So we thought to ourselves, OK, this is definitely a custom tool and a new tool. So we thought to ourselves, OK, cool. We have a new exfiltration tool. And they were also using like PSCP and WinSCP, so pretty standard tools to attempt and exfiltrate the data. So it was also really interesting to see. And another fun fact, like in terms of being detected, they didn't give a damn, just like the honey badger, if you know the honey badger. So they just they didn't care. They revealed all of their usernames, all of their passwords, we were able to see them in plain text. So this kind of concludes the data exfiltration attempt stage. As I mentioned before, this is October 7th in the afternoon. And I guess you're curious again to see what happened next. So next thing was wipers. And I will pass the stage to Chechik, who will tell you all about them.
Thank you, Daniel. So let's get back to our timeline. So on the 8th of October, the attackers deployed various wipers to cause massive damage and to erase their evidence on those endpoints. But before we dive into what they did, let's start with what is a wiper. So we asked ChatGPT, and it answered, a wiper is a tool or device used for cleaning or wiping surfaces, such as a windshield wipers for vehicles or clean wipes for household surfaces. But now, for real, what is a wiper? So it's a type of malware that is designed to cause destruction. It is used to destroy data. Some use it to render the system unusable. Most of them do. And they do it also to erase evidence of their malicious execution. It differs from a ransomware in that it aims to destroy without offering any means of recovery. And now let's take a look at the typical wiper execution. So a wiper execution starts with the wiper searching through the file system for files to corrupt. Files found gets overwritten with junk data. Then, the wiper corrupts the MBR, the master boot record, to make the computer not boot. The MBR holds both code and data the operating system uses to boot. Then, finally, to enforce the MBR corruption, the wiper will force the computer reboot. And now that we understand a bit about wipers, we can go back to our story. So, during our investigation, we noticed that various wipers were deployed. Some were custom, and some were taken directly from public repositories. What ultimately caught our eyes were 3 custom and previously undocumented wipers. Since those were all new, we named them based on indicators such as PDB path or the names the attackers had already given them. And now let's take a look at our first wiper. So the first one is called Partial Washer. It's a completely custom tool that supports command line arguments. And when none are given to it, it simply wipes the disk. It allows the user to get information about a specific volume, to wipe a specific volume, and to wipe a specific file, and do so much more. And as you can see in the picture, we notice that there are several typos in the tool's interface, and that might indicate that the tool's authors are likely not native English speakers. And now let's take a look at our second wiper. So the second one is called BFG Agonizer. And just before this one executes, when it wipes the disk, it tries to circumvent security measures that might exist on the machine by implementing anti-hooking techniques. So the use of anti-hooking techniques was not reported as a known technique by this group. We will soon talk which group that is. But this might indicate a possible upgrade of their capabilities. As for the techniques it uses, the first one is called DLL unhooking, where it restores the bytes of hooked anti-DLL functions to their original disk values to remove the inline hooks. As for the second one is called IAT unhooking, where it restores pointers of hooked import address table entries to their original function pointers to remove the IAT hooks. And now, let's take a look at our last wiper, the most important one, which is the multilayer. So multilayer is a .NET wiper in which we found several similarities with older tools of that specific threat actor. So those similarities were one of key factors in attributing this wiper to that specific threat actor. And based on our analysis, we believe that multilayer is a variant of a wiper named Apostle that was used by a group some of you know as Agris, as Assaf said. And Apostle was actually discovered in 2021 by a friend of mine, Amitai Ben-Shushan, who actually presented here yesterday at BlueHat and might be sitting here right now. So Amitai, hey, if you're here, I don't know. And so since 2021, Apostle has evolved, producing several known variants, such as the Fantasy Wiper, discovered by ESET, and at the very least, a malware with very similar code, like the IPsec helper backdoor, that was discovered by Sentinel-1, and it is also a tool by Agrius. So now let's take a deeper look into the similarities we've noticed between Multilayer and Agrius older tools to show how strong the connection is and whether Agrius are behind those attacks. Okay, so the first similarity is between the self-delete function of Multilayer and older tools of Agrius, Apostle, and IPsec helper. So on the left, we can see the implementation by Multilayer, and on the right, IPsec helper and Apostle. We can see the function name is the same. The prototype, the use of the batch file, it's the same name, the same location, it uses the same command line, so it's very similar. And now let's take a look at our second similarity. The second one is inside the recursive directory listing function of multilist. So actually, Multilayer has multiple components, one of which is multilist. It has another one, which is multiwhip. Multilist actually finds the files to corrupt, where multiwhip does the actual wiping of the files. So here we can see in the upper picture the implementation by multilist. And at the bottom one, the implementation by the Fantasy Wiper, an older tool by Agrius. So we can see the function names are the same. Both functions are recursive. They have the same structure. They use exception handlings. They call the same functions, and they have a similar variable name. And now let's take a look at our last similarity for this session. So of course, we found more similarities, but we think that for the sake of this session, 3 is enough to get the point.
I think it's the Iranians.
Yes.
I think it's stuck.
They're trying to get you, Chechik.
I'm just pressing, it doesn't do anything.
Oh, there it is. I think.
Thank you. Okay, so the last similarity is within the reboot function of Multilayer. We can see on the upper picture the implementation by Multilayer, and on the bottom one, the implementation by Apostle. So the functions, as you can see, are nearly identical. The number of lines, the order of the API calls, the arguments to those API calls, even the one argument that both functions have, has the same default value. So very similar. So actually, all those wipers were blocked by the security product that was installed on those endpoints. And in order to proceed, the actor had to bypass that security product, and it actually tried to. And we'll talk more about that later on. As for all the similarities we've just seen, it shows that there is a strong connection between Multilayer and Agrius. But is that enough to say for sure that Agrius are behind those attacks? I will now give the stage back to Assaf to conclude our attribution.
Thank you, Or. So let's talk attribution. So far, I guess you guys heard the name Agrius popping up here and there, and so there's a lot of evidence pointing to an Iranian involvement, and specifically this group. But in the context, well, first of all, we take attribution very seriously, and we try to do a thorough job, so we'll walk you through our model here. But also in the context of October 2023, you have to remember one thing about the Israeli cyberspace. It was bombarded by practically any known threat actor on the planet. Everyone was attacking Israeli cyberspace. Some people just wanted to know what's going on here. And on top of the known threat actors, you had all the cyber hacktivists, all the pro-Palestinian groups, ranging from Indonesia to Algeria, Brazil to Lebanon. Everyone was attacking here, conducting destructive attacks, defacement, DDoS, taking down entire systems. So there was a lot of noise and a lot of chance for copycat and like psychological warfare and false flag. So we really wanted to make sure that our attribution is solid. So for that, we used the famous diamond model of attribution. It's a widely known and accepted model for attribution in the threat intel industry. We use it in conjunction of our own attribution framework. We kind of spiced it up with our own stuff. But to those of you who are not familiar with this model, basically it's a great way of clustering data, threat data or incident data, and putting things into buckets if we really need to dumb it down. So the main three buckets are the capabilities, the victimology, and the infrastructure. So let's have a look at it. So when we look at the capabilities that was observed in this cluster, we saw, well, there was the web shell that had like an exact match to a previous Agrius web shell. We had some generic tools like Mimikatz. I know that Benjamin Delpy is here, so it's a great tool. But anyway, procdum, NBT scan. We had the custom SQL extraction tool that we couldn't attribute it because it was brand new. It was net new, so not attributable to any group. And we had all three custom wipers that, as Or showed you, had a lot of connections to previous Agrius tools. So on that side of the house, we were pretty comfortable saying, OK, there's enough evidence to point at Agrius. On the right side of the house, we have the infrastructure. So according to, well, back then, some of the IP addresses that the attackers used for C2, some of them were unknown. Some of them were known to have been used sometime in the past by Iranian threat actors. And I think only one address was really pointing towards Agrius. But that was enough for us to say, OK, there's an Iranian connection here. There's a link to Agrius. And of course, there's the victimology. So in that point in time, in this specific campaign, which later expanded to other industries, the main two industries that we saw this activity on was the Israeli tech industry, so a lot of tech companies, and higher education institutions like universities, colleges. And it's really interesting because when we try to look for these TTPs and IOCs through our telemetry, and remember, we have millions of endpoints throughout the world, the only place in the world where we saw this activity happened in Israel. So we were sure it was a targeted attack against Israeli companies. And so we concluded that these guys, or the attacks, were conducted by Agrius, or as we like to call them at Palo Alto, agonizing serpents. So to those of you, because I said Agrius all the time, so who are they? OK, let's find out. So it's an Iranian-backed APT group. They mainly target Israel, and they've been active since 2020. Their main MO, so they started their way with fake ransomware, if you all remember the Shearbeat incident. And then they said, OK, let's cut the crap. Let's just do wipers, because we're not in for the money anyway. And when we talk about their goals, so the first one is the steal and leak paradigm, which we're all familiar with from ransomware operators. So they steal data and then they leak it. But it's slightly different than how ransomware people use it, because when you're an Iranian APT group, when you steal data, you can actually use it to, for intelligence purposes, right? And there are many APT groups operating in Israel that are trying to be very stealthy and steal data, right? And some of them are more successful, some of them are less successful. But the point is that if you want to steal data, just to steal data, you try to stay under the radar. You try to keep quiet about it. But no, they wanted you to know that they stole your data. They leaked it. So there's an element of humiliation here. This is something very important. When it comes to this group. It's a humiliation act, it's causing fear, it's causing reputational damages to the attacked companies, so it's part of their MO. And the second part is really to wreak havoc, meaning that they use wipers as weapons of mass destruction in cyberspace. So they were targeting, this group has been targeting hospitals, they've been targeting critical infrastructure, they've been targeting the Israeli different tech sectors and the economy in general. So their purpose is to cause destruction and of course, sow fear. And if you guys are wondering how these guys look like, so they make maybe a bigger boy band than we do. But apparently, this group has been doxxed. So someone hacked them a couple of months ago. We don't know who. But according to the Israeli Cyber Directorate, and I'm paraphrasing here, these guys officially worked or getting paid by a company, an IT company called Jahat Pardaz, I'm probably butchering the name, Information Technology Solutions. So they're located in Tehran. In this doxing act, when they got hacked, so people, so aside from their names and their addresses, and like there are videos of their headquarters in Tehran, where they put their shoes before they go in. It was an interesting hacking. Anyway, so according to the Israeli Cyber Directorate, they are officially, like on the books, they're employed by a private company, you know. But in this report, it's also stated that these guys are actually being operated and directed by the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, MOIS, as some of you might know it in this name. So, and this is something that we've seen happening quite a lot with the Iranians specifically, but also with other threat actors. So they use kind of like cyber mercenaries so they can distance themselves from or trying to get away from attribution or like getting other people to do their dirty jobs. It creates this space for plausible deniability. Basically, they can say, no, it wasn't us. It was just hackers, you know, from our country, but we don't have anything to do with it. So, yeah, just like a little bit about them. And now I'll pass on the torch one last time to Daniel Frank, who will talk to you about how this group really stepped up their game and how things got personal.
Thank you, Assaf, for the lovely spoiler. So as you saw earlier, they, like Agrius, they did not really care about being detected. But what they did care about was obviously security products interfering with their work. And when that happened, and they tried to kill us, my friend Mike here and myself, we took it really personally. So unlike Mike here, I'm not really good at basketball, so I couldn't just fly to Iran and play against them and trash talk, because maybe they are good at basketball, I don't know, and there's a lot of them, as you saw. But what I could do, obviously, is just share my research with the community and kind of, expose what they were trying to do. So they came back again and again, like day after day after day, and attempted to bypass the EDR product in several ways. Let's review them. So attempt number one, they tried to tamper with this registry key, which is one of the registry keys of a dependency of the auto-start service of the EDR product. And as you can see, they failed. So they went home to their fancy Tehran office, did some more research, and then came back the next day. And they came back with this loader, with this small custom loader for the Gmer driver, which can give you, of course, the ability and the privileges to try to terminate EDR services. Now, probably a lot of you here know Gmer. It's a tool that I've been using for 10 years, I think, for anti-rootkits. But they chose it here as their weapon of choice to try to terminate the EDR product. Failed again, went home again, and came back with another third attempt. And they wrote again another custom loader, try to terminate EDR service for the third time. And this time it was this rent DRV2 driver or whatever it's called. And the interesting thing here is that this code, they took the binary itself from GitHub and wrapped it in their custom code. And the code on GitHub was up only for 2 weeks. So we could see that we're dealing here with, one, really persistent threat actors, because they kept coming back day after day, doing the research, and trying another method if the previous method did not work. And the second thing, I think that they knew like a thing or two about security and how their products work in general. So they are, although they like borrowed lots of pre-ready code, they're still a really capable threat actor. And all of these attempts just demonstrated it once again. Cool. I will pass the stage one last time, I promise. Really last time to Assaf Dahan that will leave you with some key takeaways.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Or. OK, so I guess we said a lot of things here. I want to wrap up and leave you with some key takeaways. So in the context of our investigation, we saw that Agrius really stepped up their game. Since their emergence in 2020, they really upped their game. They keep improving. They keep producing new malware, new wipers, new techniques, and they're becoming increasingly more aggressive. So in our investigation, of course, we exposed 3 new wipers, a custom-made SQL exfiltration tool, all these EDR bypass attempts. And the bottom line here is that they're really getting bolder and more sophisticated. They started as script kiddies, basically. Their attacks were really lame at the beginning. And now they're not that they're great, but they're getting more sophisticated. Don't want to flatter them at any point. On the broader context of what's happening here, and especially in the light of October the 7th, other than that the attack came from Iran and it came at a very striking, timing of the attack, so October the 5th, and the major things that they did started October 7th, and then October 8th was like the wipers and exfiltration and all that. So when we talk about Iran in a broader context, we know that Iran uses cyber warfare to advance its political and military agenda. We know that for years they've been using cyber espionage to get their upper hand or to try to get their upper hand on some military targets that they have here. We've seen more and more psychological warfare and awareness engineering that they try to do, basically turn us against each other. They're all over social media with hundreds of fake profiles trying to really mess with our minds, basically. They really try to obfuscate their involvement using different proxies, such as Hamas and Hezbollah, and of course, cyber mercenaries. And what we see more and more in recent years is that Iran as a whole, with all its different offensive cyber capacities, is getting more aggressive. And we're not the only one that got attacked with wipers. Saudi Arabia and other Gulf countries got attacked with, if you remember, the Shamoon wiper and other wipers that attacked them. So, and we definitely, and I think like Michal said it at the beginning, we are seeing a huge uptick in activity coming from Iran since October 7th. We have similar number, around 500 and even more percent more cyber attacks coming from Iran. And the last point of the talk, I promise. This should really serve as a cautionary tale to all of us here. It can really happen to any of the companies that we work for or to other companies, right? What we see time and time again is that even large companies with mature IT and security practices still get hacked. And when we look at the root cause analysis and we try to figure out how the attackers got in, it's usually not because of fancy exploits or 0 days. 80% of the time, it'll be just like poor IT hygiene, like vulnerable, unpatched servers, like happened here and in so many cases that we've seen. Weak password policy, or just like there's not sufficient protections for privileged accounts. Misconfigured assets like firewall, open S3 buckets, and so on. So this is where they get in. It's like a huge window that that we're opening for attackers and basically scream, hey, come hack me. So, and the second point that I want to make is the human factor. So we all work, well, I don't know if we all, but a lot of us here work for different vendors, and we all say we have the best product. And you know what? We might have the best product in the world, and these products can produce a bunch of alerts and preventions and all that, but if there's no one to see them, you know, what is it good for? There's still a huge risk. We see it time and time again that companies buy really fancy security products, but there's no adequate team, or maybe sometimes there's no SOC, and maybe it's just managed by a single IT person who's maybe not really trained in security, right? And they try to manage all of the different products. So usually there's a lack of security personnel to protect the companies. And even if there are good security practitioners there, there's a lack of adequate training. We see it time and time again with SOC analysts or other security practitioners that we work with. We see them, hey, we tell them, did you see this alert? And say, yeah, we saw it. And did you see this alert and this alert? But they don't connect the dots. They don't understand how real attacks happen or complex threats work. So my advice to you is really invest the time in the human factor, in training your people. The fact that you're all here with us today is a testament to that, you know, it's important enough for you to get trained, to know, to learn about new techniques, how threat actors work. Because at the end of the day, in my opinion, and maybe it's going to sounds like a bit of a boomer thing, but at the end of the day, it's people who are going to save your company when there's an incident, not security products. So until the day that generative AI replaces all of us and we're out of jobs, invest in people. And with that, we're going to finish. So if there are any questions, we're happy to take them. And if you want to learn more about this incident, read our blog on Unit 42. Thank you.
Thank you.